Can James Wood be a full-blown fantasy superstar in 2026? And can Mackenzie Gore be an ace for your fantasy team next season? I'll answer those questions and more on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Fantasy Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominick Martino, riding solo today, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It's going to subscribe to the channel and give you notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on the audio side of things, once again, please make sure you're subscribed. And if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you do that for us as well. And guys, give us a chance on the Insider's Track. On the Insider's Track, fantasy baseball doesn't stop. We keep it going year round. And we're going to be talking about keeper dynasty stuff. I've got my 2026 fantasy baseball rankings already in the works, so I can give you a copy of my rough draft. If you do decide to join us on the Insider's Track, just shoot me a message. Let me know you're interested in it. And we're going to be doing giveaways and so much more this offseason. Like I said, fantasy baseball never stops on the Insider's Track. The link is in the bio where you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can also just bet $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And all right, guys, let's get into it. Got the Washington Nationals on the docket for today. Now, listen, James Wood was absolutely fantastic last season, was a beast. And I do think he can take it to another level. We're going to break him down. We got CJ Abrams and Dylan Cruz. CJ Abrams has kind of been a little bit intriguing over the last couple of years. Didn't really take his career in the direction we thought. Dylan Cruz was kind of just hurt, flat out disappointment. We got a couple of young players in Brady House and Robert Hassel that will cover. Honestly, the rotation's a little bit thin. So we're going to talk about Mackenzie Gore and his outlook. He had a very topsy-turvy season where, kind of don't know what to expect from him in 2026. So we'll break Mackenzie Gore down. And then listen, on these episodes, at least the ones I've been doing, we're going to do a prospect thing at the end as well. And we're going to talk about some guys from a dynasty keeper perspective, Eli Willits and Travis Sykora. So you're going to want to stick around for those names and see where I value them from a keeper dynasty perspective. Going to be a really fun episode that you're going to want to stay locked on for the whole thing. There's not a moment you're going to want to miss. A lot of stuff going on today in this Nationals episode. So let's start with James Wood and his season, and how we're going to learn from this and how we're going to value him for 2026, right? So James Wood, monster season, all-star as a 22-year-old, 157 games played, 598 at-bats, had 87 runs, 38 doubles, 31 homers, 94 RBIs, 15 steals, had 85 walks, did strike out a monster's 221 times, and he hit 256. Now with James Wood, that's an amazing first full-blown season in the bigs. He did play 79 games in 2024, but this is the first really full shot at it, right? Has the home run total, steals 15 bags, good counting stats on a Nationals team, from a whole standpoint, wasn't super impressive. But I think there's even more here with James Wood. I don't even think that we fully scratched the surface yet, right? The underlying stuff when it comes to batting average, expected batting average looks like a 270. And I believe it, right? Because look at the hard hit rate. He's in the 98th percentile of all baseball. He's in the 94th percentile of barrel percentage. Average exit velocity sits at the 98th percentile in all of baseball. The bat speed's legitimate. He knows how to take a walk, even though he does strike out a lot as well. He does know how to take a walk. There's just so much that this kid can do, right? Now, when I say I think there's another level, I think there's room for more power. I don't think it's going to be an astronomical amount of more power, but could he, potentially approach 40 home runs next year, the year after? I think it's in his, in his wheelhouse. Don't forget that James Wood is a mountain of a man at 6'7", 234. So I think there's 40-ish home run power. The counting stats could potentially be better if this Nationals team gets better. 94 RBI and 87 runs for a team that I said, once again, wasn't great is really, really fantastic. The speed for James Wood, he's in the 61st percentile of sprint speed, which is above average. So he's quick enough to get the job done. And Steals is just kind of really if he wants to do it, if the team needs him to do it. I'm not going to bank on more than 15, but there is upside for it. And the batting average, man, the batting average is the thing that I really think that James Wood can take to the next level in 2026. Wood's a student of the game. I know this offseason he's going to put his head down and really, get in the cages and, potentially work maybe with like a company like Driveline or just even his coaching staff there with the Nationals and just maybe, get that touch for, get that batting average up a little bit, right? He's always been a good guy in the minors with batting average, his best season being in 2024 in 52 games. He hit 353. So I like I said, I think this is something that James Wood could do. Even the underlying stuff is backing up, what I'm saying here when it comes to batting average. I think Wood could potentially be like a 275 kind of guy. 40-ish homers. The counting stats could be very well. 15 plus potential steals. And if he could take a step back and strike out a little bit less, the walks are already pretty good. It's just that he needs to strike out a little bit less. Could even be a phenomenal player in points leagues. I think James Wood is, let's see where I have him ranked. I know I keep talking about my early 2026 rankings. I'll grab those for you guys and kind of let you know where I potentially have James Wood going into 2026, but this is still super, super early, rough draft kind of, rankings we're talking here. So don't judge me too hard, on anything. I'm not super committed to, these rankings yet, but I do have James Wood in my top 12. My top 12 outfielders, I do currently have him at 10. And not that there's so much upside at drafting him as a number one outfielder or, as the 10th outfielder. I just truly think he's not going to let you down. I think the floor is safe. I think the floor is, basically similar to what he did this year, but maybe with a little bit less in the counting stats. What's the worst case scenario here for James Wood? Maybe 80 runs, 80 RBIs, 30 homers, and a 255 batting average. That's not killing you. He's not a number one outfielder at that point, but it's just really tough to, pass up on a guy like James Wood, who I think, is going to be phenomenal in 2026. So James Wood, definitely not a must draft, but somebody that I'll have a few shares of in 2026. Let's move on to this next guy. Let's talk CJ Abrams, right? And, like I said, just such an intriguing, player when it comes to fantasy because, the speed's there, the power he can tap into. And, he's still only 24. He was 24 in 2025. So next year will be his age 25 season. It's just like, okay, is there more here with CJ Abrams? Can he keep continuing to, do a little bit better each and every year and eventually become a potential fantasy superstar, right? So I like the season, the 2025 season from CJ Abrams. It's 144 games played, 580 at-bats, 92 runs, 35 doubles, 5 triples, 19 bombs, 60 RBIs, 31 steals, 37 walks, 225 strikeouts, and a 257 batting average. So we know Abrams is that speed demon on the base paths. Has been, pretty consistent when you're looking at the home run numbers, the steal numbers. Even though we had that 47 steal season in 2023, and it was like a monster steal total down the stretch. The thing is that I don't know if he's ever gonna, really get back to that. He's in the 70th percentile of sprint speed. Now that's not super fast, but he has the will and want to do it. So I'm not going to really expect him to get back to that 40 plus steals, season, but can he have, 35, 40-ish? I think that's in the wheelhouse. The 257 batting average we saw this year, underlying stuff agrees with it. When it comes to, expected batting average, it was 256. So it's right there what we saw this year. So, even though he's 24, I'm not necessarily, none of the underlying stuff is screaming to me that, oh, well, he could have more power, or it's going to be a huge speed gain or a huge batting average gain. So I think CJ Abrams, in my personal opinion, might be somebody who, everyone just takes a look at going into 2026 and is just like, hey, there's upside here, which there is. I don't know if I'm going to be drafting him for it, right? Shortstop is a very deep position going into 2026. I'll tell you that. I've been working on my shortstop rankings, and it's definitely pretty deep. So when it comes to the position, I'm scrolling through my shortstop rankings now. I actually have CJ Abrams at 10, behind like a Geraldo Perdomo, behind a Corey Seager, behind a Mookie Betts, who has the eligibility, and I think he'll retain eligibility on Yahoo. So with CJ Abrams personally, I don't think I'll have a lot of shares, but I do think the line, the statistical line we saw from CJ Abrams is repeatable, just not banking on it being too much better going into 2026. But all right, guys, before we move on and talk about Dylan Cruz, Luis Garcia Jr., we talk about a little bit of pitching here with the Nationals, then we do prospects. Mackenzie Gore and Robert Hassel and Eli Willits, those names and more coming up next. And all right, guys, I need to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel, right? The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Me personally, I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, try player props, and even follow live lines during the games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the app today and get started. All right, I know you guys are probably listening to this over the weekend, and the Giants have already played. They played Thursday Night Football. I'm talking about next week and going forward, man. I'm a Giants fan. I'm out here in New York if you're a listener. Bet on the Giants, man. Bet on Cam Scatterboo and my boy Jackson Dart. They look great this year. If you're a Giants fan, this is the first time I'm feeling some hope for football in a long time. So I'm going with any props, any bets you can get with Jackson Dart or Cam Scatterboo going into, next week. That's what I'm doing with my $5 bet, trying to make some money. And you guys should do too. So FanDuel, get on there today. And guys, just want to mention it one more time. Join Matt and I on the Insiders Track this offseason. If you're a fantasy baseball fanatic and you just can't get enough of fantasy baseball, Matt and I are on there talking baseball all day, every day. So, we're going to be talking about keeper stuff, dynasty. We're going to be doing giveaways. It's just going to be a lot of fun this offseason. And, like I said, I got my rankings. I'm working on them. It's a real rough draft. But if you are interested in something like that, just, join the Insiders Track. Link is in the bio if you're listening or watching. And it's available on any of our social media platforms. Shoot me a message. Say, Dom, I'm looking for those 2026 rankings. And I'll just shoot it over to you. And, we'll get that done. But, guys, let's keep pushing here. Got a few more names we want to get through on this episode. And one of those names is Dylan Cruz. Now, Dylan Cruz was like a top 5 prospect going, a couple of years back. He's dealt with a couple of injuries. The past couple of years, he's dealt with a little bit of underperformance. I'll say this. I was never really a full-blown Dylan Cruz guy. I know Matt has liked him a little bit more than I have over the years. So I kind of wish I had Matt with me to speak to Cruz a little bit more. Because he's a little bit more familiar with Cruz. Not that I'm not, but Matt just, has a little bit more insight, on what the allure is of a Dylan Cruz. Me personally, like I said, just not – I know he's fast. I know there's a bit of power, but it's always been a question mark for the batting average for me, right? Because if you can't put the ball to the bat in the first place, man, you're not going to be able to, get on base. He's not a guy who, he's not a guy who I think I'm just banking on a huge development in the batting average department, right? I know he could take a walk. He's shown that over his minor league track record and actually did a decent job with the walk to strikeout ratio this year. But even you look in the minors, hit 270 in 2024. Did hit 292 in 2023. But I just don't know if, like I said, that he's just going to make a huge bounce back in batting average. Um, you know, he hit 208 this year across 85 games in the bigs, hit 218 across 31 games in the bigs in 2024, hit 244 across 13 games in the minors this year. Now, at only 24 years old next season, I think there's potential for Cruz to be better. And I'll say this. I do think there's going to be some incredible value on Dylan Cruz going into 2026, right? I don't think anybody's going to be like, oh, I don't even know if I have him ranked in my outfield or rankings yet. If I do, that actually give us a little bit of insight here. I've ranked about 40 outfielders so far, and I don't have Dylan Cruz in my top 40. But I will say this. So, as I said, this is a rough draft of my ranking so far. So I have my guys ranked, and then I have a giant gap, and then I have like the next group of guys that I think are, I want to get into the rankings at the, where I'm at. Dylan Cruz is next up. So I think Dylan Cruz is going to be like the top 45 outfielder going into 2026. Don't think you're going to have to pay too much for him. So we'll see what the 46th outfielder cost us last year, and we can kind of gauge off that. Wow. So we were getting, oh no, that's the shortstop. I'm sorry. That's the 46th, the 45th shortstop. Let's do 45th outfielder. So that's like pick 162. So that's actually fair. I'm not mad at that. If you want to throw your dart at Dylan Cruz there, there's 40, 50 steal upside. I want to say potentially a 250 to 240, 250 batting average. The counting stats can be decent because, like I said, look at James Wood and CJ Abrams counting stats. They weren't that bad last year. This national team is going to, I think, be sneaky good from a fantasy baseball standpoint in 2026. So I like I said, I might not love the player, but I'm going to love the chance to buy back in on Dylan Cruz at a good price in 2026 because there's still upside here. I just don't think there's that top 5 prospect upside that some might think there is. So just don't. I wouldn't draft Dylan Cruz just putting a lot of stock into it. I would take it more like, hey, this is just a lottery scratch off of kind of pick here, where I can get some steals, potentially get some runs, maybe a bit of power, maybe like 18 to 20 home run power there. So, that's kind of my expectation for Dylan Cruz going into 2026. Let's do Luis Garcia Jr., man. I was a big Luis Garcia Jr. guy going into, the 2025 season. And, the thing is, he had a very mixed bag of a season. It was, a lot of it was in the second half. He had 16 homers and 14 steals. Took a step back in the batting average department, only had 252. But the runs were not bad at 67. RBIs were okay at 66. It was only 139 games and 488 at-bats. For Luis Garcia, did deal with a bit of injury here and there. So, I mean, it was I want to say overall it was a tough go of it for the 25-year-old, the past season for Luis Garcia Jr. I think he can rebound, going into 2026. You don't have to. I think the price is going to be, very, very reasonable for the second baseman, next season. So he could be somebody I see myself buying back into. I don't think I have him ranked yet because even when you look at the expected batting average from Luis Garcia, it's at a 291. Now, he's not super fast and, the power stuff doesn't blow you away, but he could still get it done. I don't think if Luis Garcia plays 150 games next season, I don't think 20 homers and 15 steals with a 275 batting average is out of the question. Another player that I think we can buy back in at a decent price on going into the 2026 season. So I might be doing that, especially at second base that isn't as stacked as, shortstop or, some of these other first bases absolutely loaded going into, 2026. So I have Luis Garcia around my 20th second baseman. I could see that potentially moving up to maybe like 15, 16 in that range. A lot of interchangeable guys there too. But at that point too, I will say this. After about the top 3 second baseman, or maybe even top 5 second baseman, it just becomes like a little bit of a mishmash. You get a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. So I think it's going to become a lot of preference at that point. So I'm not going to be mad at you if you have Luis Garcia a little bit higher, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get him higher than about 15th at second base. Let's hold off. Let's hold off before we talk about Brady House, Mackenzie, Gore, do some prospects in, Sykora and Willits. Maybe we'll do a little bit of Cade Cavalli talk. Those names and more coming up next. And all right, guys, I need to talk to you about my friends over at Rugged. Guys, you probably heard of Vialis, Viagra or Cialis. I combined those two into one. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugged Ready. Rugged Ready is the next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pill that can take hours, Rugged's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in just 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugged might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it's completely online. Rugged connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment directly to your door. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugged.com/LockedOnMLB and use the code LockedOnMLB to get 15% off today. That's going to be RUGIET.com/LockedOnMLB. And once again, you're going to use that promo code LockedOnMLB for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit Rugged. Please visit the Rugged website for full safety information. And all right, guys, let's get back into this, right? Let's do a little Brady House talk. Brady House was somebody who really intrigued me, this season. Got the call, for those Nats who we've been talking about, and wasn't that bad, had impressive stretches, the 234 batting average might fool you, it was over 73 games, 261 at bats. He had 26 runs, 11 doubles, 4 homers, 29 RBIs, 5 steals. He had 8 walks to 78 strikeouts. Wow, did not realize the plate discipline was that bad for Brady House, but like I said, he kind of had his moments there for the Nationals. I do think he's going to, get the chance going into 2026. I think he's going to be free 99. Some of the underlying stuff looked better. Even the stuff for batting average, the batting average for Brady House was a 263. The hard hit rate and sweet spot looked pretty good. The sprint speed was in the 61st percentile. So, Brady House was a top prospect for the Nationals before getting the call this year. And, it might be a free 99 draft pick, in your keeper dynasty formats, somebody that if you could get, pretty cheap. I think this is probably the cheapest he's been in years because, Brady House had a pretty decent track record. And even in the minors this year, over 65 games, he hit 304 with 13 homers, 41 RBIs. And then if you look back to the 2023 season, Brady House had 12 homers, 9 steals in 88 games, 340 at-bats, and he hit 312. So might be a deeper league cut, but definitely wanted to give him a little bit of moment to speak about Brady House. Let's talk about the ace. Let's talk about Mackenzie Gore and the Jekyll-and-Hyde season that he had. Man, I'll tell you this. I was preaching Mackenzie Gore in the offseason, made some changes, was having a huge spring training, even took some steps in 2024. So I thought Gore was a pretty solid bet going into 2025. And man, I was feeling really, really good after, that first half with Mackenzie Gore, because in the first half, Gore, like I said, was just dominant, had a 3.02 ERA across 19 starts, 110 innings pitched, 138 strikeouts, and he had a 1.19 whip over that time. And Gore finished horribly. His last 11 starts, it was a 6.75 ERA over 49 innings, only 47 strikeouts. And this is not a joke. It was a 1.70 whip for Gore down the stretch. Was just basically unusable at the end of the season. Literally from July on was atrocious. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Gore going into 2026. I did start working on my starting pitcher rankings. I don't think I got Gore in there yet. I don't think I got that far into it. Actually, I did. But I'm probably gonna do some adjusting. I think Gore winds up around somebody like a Tanner Bybee or a Jack Flaherty. So I'm probably around like SP 50, 55 is going to be my first assumption. You take him as your SP5, preferably 6, in a 12-man league is probably where I'm thinking right now. It's just going to be tough because I know he can strike guys out. I know he can do it for extended stretches. I don't know if Gore is going to have that Max Scherzer, Robbie Ray moment where he figures it out and he winds up being a Cy Young caliber pitcher. It's there. The talent's there. No, I don't think anyone's questioning that with Mackenzie Gore. It's just, can he do it for a 32 or even a 30 start season? I haven't seen it yet, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. Because like I said, I've seen starting pitchers that have the talent and start off their careers kind of tough that figure it out. So I don't think I'm fully out on Mackenzie Gore. It's just going to really depend on the draft price going into 2026. I don't think anybody's going to be excited about him. But you know what? If he does have another good spring training, that person might be me. But moving on, I digress. Let's do the prospects. Let's talk about Eli Willits, right? Let's talk about him. Number 1 prospect for the Washington Nationals. And I think, I think there's some good reason to be excited. Now, Willits won't be somebody that I think I'll say there's a strong chance that we don't see him in 2026. Doesn't mean there's a 0 chance. Only 17 years old, but he's the number 15 prospect in all of MLB. Really known for that hit tool. He's quick as well. Has a pretty solid glove. Let's talk about what he did. He played 15 games in Single A in 2025. Got out there for a bit. Hit 300, had 7 runs, a double, a triple, no homers, 5 RBIs, had 7 walks to 12 strikeouts, and he stole 2 bags. I think the kid's going to be pretty solid, man. His dad actually played in the bigs for a while with the Yankees. I should have known that actually. And his brother's a coach, so it's in the blood. He's got a lot of upside here, and he's the 3rd youngest player. Actually, he was number 1 overall pick. Excuse me, my apologies. I forgot it was Willits. I always get the Ethan Holiday in my head, but no, it was Willits. He was the number 1 overall pick in 2025. So he actually becomes the highest, or second youngest since Griffey, was picked. So at number 1 overall back in 87. So this kid's the real deal, Holyfield. If you can acquire him in Dynasty keeper formats for a decent price, I'd probably go out there and try and get that done. But there's good reason to be excited here in Washington. That's why I wanted to talk about Eli Willits. So you do know the name. Don't think he gets the call next year, but hey, listen, I can see him trailblaze. I could see him run through AA and maybe be in AAA by the end of the season. Definitely possible if he was, hitting that well in single A. But let's move on. Let's talk about Travis Sykora real quick. I think Sykora winds up being, right next to Mackenzie Gore in, 2027. Because unfortunately, Sykora did get Tommy John, I want to say in June, July, somewhere around that time. So he's probably going to miss all of 2025. But I want to tell you guys why I'm talking about Sykora. 12 starts in 2025. I mean, he's probably going to miss all of 2026. I think I said 2025. But in 2025, he got 12 starts. It was a 1.79 ERA for Sykora, 45 innings, 79 strikeouts. Batters were hitting 120 against him, and he had an 0.77 whip. In 2024, Sykora had 20 starts, 2.33 ERA, 85 innings pitched, 129 strikeouts. Batters hit 168 against him, 0.9 whip. Sykora's a mountain of a man. He's 6'6", 232. He's got a big fastball. He's got a nice slider. He's got a good splitter. The control has, really taken leaps and bounds. The kid's really good, man, and I'm very excited. His fastball sits around 90, 95, 96 on average. It's got a lot of buzz on it. Really good pitch. He's got, like I said, that nice splitter that's got low spin, and it's got like nice fade to it as well. That slider's nasty. That sits at around 86. Just a lot of, movement on those pitches, and Sykora could be a potential ace. I'll say this. If you play in a dynasty format and Sykora's like available, I'd add him right away. Or the thing with Sykora is if you can go out there and get him right now while he's hurt, that's going to be monstrous for you because Sykora is the 49th prospect in all of baseball right now, and that's hurt. So definitely, I love what Sykora can bring to the table. But guys, that is going to be all for today. Listen, shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And after you make us your first listen, you're going to want to go and check out, the all new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And guys, don't forget to check out the newsletter as well. But until next time, see you.